what is this metaphoric connection between Gehenna fire and the lake of fire? So when we get to the book of Revelation, we now are contending with this idea of lake of fire. It's never referenced to as hell in any translation that I'm aware of. Matter of fact, the word that is translated into hell in the New Testament, which is Hades, is cast into the lake of fire. So obviously you're not casting hell into hell. Death and grave are being cast into the lake of fire. So the lake of fire is limne tau pur. So when you hear the word pur, immediately there's a connection with the word purification. Fire is a cleansing agent, and brimstone, theou, similar to the word theos, means divine. So this is a lake of divine purification. What's happening here is that all of the evil and the wickedness and the disease and the spiritual blindness, the old man, the carnal mind, all of that is being dealt with in this lake of fire. It is a test. It is a judgment. The Greek word there for basaniso is to test by the touchstone. So when you see a metallurgist test gold, what they do is they strike it against this touchstone to see the purity of the gold. And in that lake, sulfur is being applied, and sulfur binds to impurities and purifies the metal. It's a metallurgic figurative language that's being used here to speak of the refiner's fire. In Malachi chapter 1 verse 2, we see, but who can endure the day of his coming, and who can stand when he appears? For he is a refiner's fire, and like a launderer's soap. There's a cleansing idea to this great white throne judgment. Who can stand? No one can stand, because God is a consuming fire. When we look at what's happening in the lake of fire, this lake of pur and theou, they're being tormented, tested, day and night, in inference to time, into the age of the ages. So it's a period of time. It's the great time that is occurring here, the culmination, as God is finally abolishing all evil, wickedness, sin, the old man, the old nature, carnality, disease, spiritual blindness. What's interesting, when we look at Mark chapter 9, and it's speaking of this Gehenna fire, it says that if thy hand offend thee, cut it off. It's better to enter the kingdom or enter into life maimed than have two hands and go into hell, into the fire that shall never be quenched. But if we look a little further down, we see that everyone shall be salted by fire. We are enduring fiery trials. It is God's objective in Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, where it says that, let us make man after our likeness. This is a process that began there and continues. In Romans, I believe it says, those he called, he justified, he sanctified, that we would be conformed to the image of his son. So this is we are dying to ourselves daily. We are enduring fiery trials. We are enduring tribulation, which produces patience, which produces character. We are becoming like God. And it's through these fiery trials that these things begin to materialize in our life. And so now, we fast forward and we see that there's this great white throne judgment. There's another judgment that's referenced in Corinthians chapter 3, verse 15. It says that the wood, hay, and stubble will be burnt up, but the gold, silver, and precious stones remain. And if any man's work is burnt up, he shall suffer loss, but he shall be saved as by fire. The idea that this has to be forever, when the language itself indicates that it is for a period of time, it's not an assault against God's justice. There's no requirement that these things have to go on forever. They just have to go on until the last penny is paid, according to Matthew chapter 5. And so when you consider what God's ultimate objective is, which is to gather all things in heaven and in earth in him, that he may be all in all, that Jesus being the image of the invisible God, that by him all things were created. That's a very important statement there. All things were created, whether they be in heaven or on earth, principalities, all things are created by him. And by him all things consist. And it pleased God to reconcile all things through the blood of the cross. And so the good news of the gospel is that Jesus came to seek and save the lost. And no one will remain lost forever. Jesus will achieve his objective to be the Savior